Okay. Chairperson Sutherland is excused. Dr. Balo?
Here.
Secretary Matheson?
Here.
Mary Chick Crawford is excused. Mr. Iard?
Here.
And Natalie DeVersa is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We won't designate an alternate today. Wish we did. Approval of agenda from last, approval of the agenda. Okay.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. All those in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Approval of the meeting minutes from the regular meeting from April 4th.
Move to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 4th.
Point of order.
I'll second it.
Secretary Matheson, you were not at the meeting. You can't move to approval.
Oh.
Sorry. It has to go the other way.
Okay, I move to approve the minutes from April 4th.
Thank you.
I second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for the approving of the minutes. Okay, any public comments on non-agenda items? Public comments? No? Thank you. Now, the review of the BZA order to proceed in handling of appeals and initial considerations. Where is that, on page 7? Where's it actually at? Oh, I was going to say, normally we read them off. Okay. Oh, the presentation of the planner. Oh, the presentation of the petitioner, receipt of public comments. Comments shall only be heard from the persons who have signed in, so you must sign in at the door, at the sheet, and state their name and address for the record. We'll have recommendations of the planner and the staff, and then the board deliberation and actions. So, our first agenda item, action items are case number A1904-104, Park Island Drive. Can we
Ready
please
for
hear
me?
the, yes,
Okay.
presentation of the planner?
That's me. Tonight, that's me. So this is the application of Jamie Zimmer and Christopher Hoekstra for two variances for property located at 104 Park Island Drive. The variances that they are requesting are side yard setback variances. As to the north side yard, they're requesting that be reduced from the required 10-foot minimum to 4.1 feet. And as to the south side yard, they're requesting that be reduced from the required 10-foot minimum to 4.5 feet. You have 5 standards that you're called upon to review in determining whether or not the variance is justified, a dimensional variance is justified. And we have some comments on each of those in our memo that I'll review with you. The first is whether compliance with the ordinance standards prevents use of the property or is unnecessarily burdensome. The minimum required lot size for single-family residential use parcels in this zoning district, which is the RM zoning district, or multi-family residential, though it does also allow single-family use, is 7,200 square feet, and the required lot width is 60 feet. This particular lot has an area of 5,874 square feet and a lot width of 60 feet. So it is non-conforming as to area, although it does meet the required width. However, it's worth noting, and what that paragraph doesn't say is that it's only about 100 feet deep. And so what you end up with is a lot that's relatively less deep than you would expect for the district, even though it's just as wide. And that does put constraints on the buildable area and the way a home can be configured on the lot. It's also the case that the RM district though it allows single-family homes, imposes a setback upon them that is greater than, side yard setback, that is greater than would ordinarily be the case for a comparable single-family district like the RL Lake Single Family Residential District, where a side yard setback would be allowed. And so there is some uniqueness, as we viewed it, to this parcel, given that even though the area is all zoned RM, it probably would not be appropriate to rezone the parcel. That would be spot zoning. It's used principally as single family there. There's, I think, single family homes on either side. And the way that they're proposing to lay this structure out is consistent with the way you would expect single family homes to be laid out. That said, the remaining area obviously is wide enough for a single-family home because it meets the required lot width. But it's also worth noting, and I don't think our memo specifically said this, but I observed this in looking at the existing and proposed footprints of the homes, which I think you had in your packet, the two different surveys. These setbacks that are proposed are in fact, and the applicant will need to confirm this, but I think they're actually greater than the setbacks for the existing home, which they're proposing to tear down to build the new structure. So, that's my comments on the first standard. Second standard is that the variance will provide substantial justice to the applicant as well as to other property owners. Obviously, the applicant is interested in creating a home that is more of a year-round dwelling here, and so that the granting of the variance would allow them to do that. We're told that the properties on either side are also in support of this, and I think you have at least one piece of correspondence that has been passed out tonight that demonstrates that. And so it appears that the neighbors also view this as being an upgrade to the lot, and so would do substantial justice to those other properties as well, property owners as well. The third standard is that the variance is the minimum possible. Obviously, there could be marginal reductions in the variance requested that would still allow a home to be built on the lot. The applicant will have to describe why this particular dimension is needed as opposed to, for example, meeting the 5-foot side yard variance or setback. The fourth standard is that the variance is due to unique circumstances peculiar to the property. As I mentioned above, there's an increased setback here because of the RM zoning district, and also the lot is relatively less deep than you would expect for a single-family lot, putting constraints on the depth of the home that you can have and having to make up for that area in width. And then finally, the fifth standard is that the problem necessitating the variance is not self-created. Clearly, the applicant did not create the zoning district, the RM zoning district, nor did they create the shape of this lot. That's a function of things that happened that were outside of their control. And so it's only self-created insofar as they are choosing to build a new structure on the site, but as I pointed out, the current structure doesn't comply with the side yard setback requirements for this district either. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I won't get into our recommendation until that point on your agenda.
Okay. Any questions for the planner? No? Okay. Presentation of the petitioner. Please step forward, state your name.
Good evening. My name is Joe Zimmer. Live at 205 Park Island Avenue. and I represent Jamie Zimmer Hoekstra and her husband, Chris Hoekstra.
Okay.
And I would like to say that I think the planner did a good job explaining everything. If you have any particular questions for me, I would like to comment that the applicant did take into consideration trying to get us least amount of variances that they needed. I know that when their architect designed the house, he kept 25-foot variance from the lake to the front of the house and from the road to the back of the house. And so I think the variances that they need on the north side and the south side are very reasonable. And as the planner did mention, it's zoned as an RL, but the majority of the property on Lake Orion in the village are zoned RM, as you well know. And
Other way around.
I'm sorry?
Other way around.
RL is, oh yeah, that is the other. I was just doing that check to make sure you were right. You were. Okay. It's zoned RM, I believe, right? Yeah, okay. So anyhow, and those variances are 5 feet, which is twice as less stringent as the property of a very similar lot. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Truthfully, myself, no, I'm actually looking at the plans right here. The house fits very nicely on the lot, so, I don't know, I don't have any questions. Gentlemen? No? This is actually moving pretty smoothly. It's better than I expected. Okay, any other comments?
We've done our homework.
Yep, I can see that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? No?
Not from me, no, sir.
No? Anybody else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then, thank you. Receipt of public comments. So do we have any public comments? I know I got to read this in as well. So,
We need to open the public hearing.
okay,
Open the public hearing.
yes. Receipt of public comments
Yeah,
at
you
this
have
time?
to say you're going to open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm going to open the public hearing?
Yes.
For the receipt of public comments?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so let me read into the public comments, a letter from Drew and Michelle Cioria from 112 Park Island Drive, Lake Orion, Michigan, for the appeals of appeal number A1904. To whom it may concern, my wife and I reside at 112 Park Island Drive, which is a home just south of 104 Park Island Drive. I'm writing to give my support for the request of the side yard setback of 5.5 feet. The variance requested will have no impact on us. We also believe that the proposed construction of the house as shown to us by the Holzgras will be a welcome addition to the Park Island Drive. The Village of Lake Orion, I am sorry we cannot attend the hearing and would have been there in person. However, we had a conflict this evening. If you have any questions for us, please do not hesitate to contact us at your convenience. Thank you in advance for your consideration with their signature. Please put this in the record.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? No? Okay. I'd like to close the public comments at this time. Thank you. Let's open it up for the recommendation of the planner.
Based on the findings that I discussed previously, we recommend that the variances be approved. We listed in the memo that we provided for you a few reasons that justified that. One, that the location is in a multiple family zoning district, adding an additional setback burden not typical for a single family home. Two, that the setbacks proposed are essentially compliant with the requirements for lakeside single-family residential. Three, that the variance would provide substantial justice to the applicant and is not adverse to the interest of any adjoining properties. 4 that the applicant has stated support, and we now see in the record support for the proposed variances from adjoining property owners. 5, that the variances requested, well, I would not cite 5, frankly, because this is not the minimum, so let's skip over 5. 6, that there are unique circumstances peculiar to the property itself, particularly the location in the multiple family zoning district and the lack of standard lot depth as discussed, and finally that the need for the variances is only partly self-created.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's close the planner. Board deliberation, I'd like to open it.
Well, you could say any variance is partly self-created, so I think that's really, doesn't mean a whole lot, but I happen to know the house through Peoria to the south must have got a variance because they're probably just as close as they're asking. So I don't think you do for one that you don't do for the other.
Yes, the one that, to the south, the garage is even closer than the variance that's being asked. Yes, that's true. Senior Matheson?
I've got no issues.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
I'm trying. No, I'm not the best at this stuff, so let's see, which one is it? Okay, I make a motion to approve case number A-19-04, 104 Park Island Drive, that what are the variances here? We approved the,
Page 36.
I was there once. Okay, so it would be the north yard setback from 10 feet minimum required to a 4.10 feet proposed, which is the 5.90 variance. And also approve the south side yard setback, 10 feet minimum required, wanting a 4.50 feet proposed to the edge of the covered porch, which is a 5.50 variance requested. Somebody to second it, I guess.
Okay, normally you have to put in the, we approve or deny based on the variances of the planner. Yeah. Yes, yes. Okay, good.
That was the first couple
Okay.
of words in the sentence.
Then all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, then passed. Thank you. Have a nice day. Unless I missed something? Okay, moving to the next case. Case number A1906, 445 North Canal Street. Let's give them a chance to vacate here. Okay, in case A1906, 445 North Canal Street, presentation by the planner. Let's please open the presentation of the planner.
Okay, this is the application of Michael and Stephanie Stroll, who, as you say, property at 445 North Channel Street. And the request is for a front yard setback variance. The request is to reduce the required front yard setback from 25 feet that's required to 3 feet. This property is located in the RL, Residential Lake One Family Dwelling District. The parcel is a conforming lot and meets the minimum lot area and lot width requirements. The property is currently vacant. We had various surveys in your packet that show it to be on the south side of North Channel Street, at the end of North Channel Street, between the street and the canal that abuts it to the south. And there's an island off on the other side of the canal. So going through the standards that we just went through for the other variants, the first being compliance with ordinance standards prevents the use of the property or is unnecessarily burdensome. So even though the lot has an area of over 35,000 square feet and a lot width which spans the entire frontage on Channel Street and is quite substantial, the shape of the lot is unusual. Again, it's not very deep, and it has limitations that are placed upon it based on the location of wetlands on the property and various soil types, creating a limited building envelope on the site. In addition to asking for the front yard setback variance tonight, the applicant is also asking the Board of Zoning Appeals to consider recommending to the Village Council that the portion of Channel Street that abuts the property be vacated for the reason that it is not necessary to serve any other properties. And they point out that if, in fact, that street was vacated, then they would not need the setback variance that they're requesting. The property has a configuration that dictates the structure being placed in a location where it's much closer to the street than would be indicated by the setback. And if the proposed structure were to be moved back, that is to the south, further away from the existing location of Channel Street, the applicant indicates that that would cause the location to be within a regulated wetland, which even if it were permissible by pursuant to the wetland regulations that would prevail, it would still not be desirable or good practice to impact the wetland in that way. There's also a high point on the site which dictates a location of the structure as proposed and would allow for the creation of a walkout if it were in this location. The next standard is that the variance will provide substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners. The substantial justice for the applicant is obvious, that it allows for the construction of a dwelling on this property, which is currently vacant. We didn't feel like there was any indication that it would not do substantial justice to neighboring property owners. It will not affect line of sight on the abutting street. Obviously, will not create any traffic issues. Some people may now have their views altered because there will now be a structure on this lot, but that would be true no matter where the structure were to be placed on the lot. The third standard variance requested is the minimum possible. The proposal is to set the dwelling back 5 feet and have an additional 2-foot overhang. As compared to the size of the parcel, the size of the home that they're proposing to create is not excessive in any way, and is in scale to the size of the parcel. And so we felt like as long as you are convinced that indeed the limitations on the parcel in terms of soils and wetlands are such as the applicant has represented, that the variance would be the minimum necessary to allow for the use of the property. That the need for variance is due to unusual circumstances or unique circumstances peculiar to the property. That is so, as I've described, the soil conditions, the presence of wetlands, the shape of the lot, and its location at the end of what is a dead-end street, which has, in fact, no other utility besides serving, or no other apparent utility besides serving this parcel, are all unique characteristics of this particular piece of property. And then finally, 5, that the problem necessitating the variance is not self-created, and we found that to be true. All those reasons I just cited are not creations of the applicant, they're characteristics of this particular piece of property. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Gentlemen? No? Okay, we'll close the presentation by the planner. Let's open the presentation by the petitioner. Please step forward, state your name.
Evening. My name is Michael Stroll. I'm the owner with my wife of 445 North Channel. My wife and I bought this property last year with the intention to build a house on it for us and our newborn son. Ultimately, the reason for this dimensional variance that we're asking is really due to a couple practical difficulties found on the property. Specifically the wetland mentioned by the planner. It also allows the house itself to be, more of the house I should say, positioned a little further north. I had some test piers put in the property, and the further north test pier is only need to be 30 feet deep. The one that's more south towards the lake setback, it needed to go 60 feet. So obviously the farther north I am, the less depth of pier. It also certainly improves the grading around the house with the higher elevation, more north in that area. And a big part of this property was originally platted in 1925. And the majority of the lot consisted of 6 lots or plats or whatever you call them. And I think they've been over the years by the village, they've been rightly combined because most of the plats are in the flood zone and in the area that's delineated for wetlands. And to get a lot that has enough buildable area to get a house, but even then, especially because the right-of-way was originally intended to get over to the original dead end at the original lot 19. So when they combined it, they just left the right-of-way. So in addition, the proposal, after discussing a little bit with Joe Young, I made a request in September 2018 for the village to consider vacating the portion of the right-of-way along my lot, and they recommended, start the ZBA process, and they recommended the BZA consider recommending to the village council just that. So in doing that, it would give me a 25-foot setback, so the need for the variance would not be needed. My request here tonight, and as documented in my variance application was I'm asking for a dimensional variance and a recommendation to the village council to consider. That would allow me, with the dimensional variance, to proceed with building plans, while in parallel, I work with the village council to consider vacation of the adjoining portion of the right-of-way. Any questions for me?
No, I saw the only thing it's funny. Truthfully, I'm surprised you can build on this lot, because I've seen it quite a few times, and yes, it looks like 2/3 of it is wetlands. As for, I don't, we could buy off on a variance tonight, but I do not think, I mean, I don't know how we make a recommendation. This does have to go to the village council for the actual piece of land.
Well, I guess the question is just a variance all you really need to build your house? Because we don't really have the authority to give village property, but...
No, it's just a recommendation, so
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, this is a right-of-way, so there's already 20 feet there, basically, nobody's next to. So I look at it that you're only asking for a couple of feet variance because it's the right-of-way. And I don't have a problem with that. As far as recommending that the council vacate the land, I probably not necessarily would do that.
I don't think it's recommending that the council vacate the land, it's recommend the council consider vacating the land. So I know there's been various discussion with Joe, and when he referred me to the BZA, he actually recommended that to the planning coordinator, that it's recommended that the BZA consider recommending the council to consider.
Okay,
So-
and the reason you say that is because you're gonna build your house almost all the way as far east as you can on that piece of property. So at that point, you'll basically have like a giant driveway going past your house.
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere.
And it's an unimproved right-of-way, and it's one that,
It is paved, right?
it is paved, but it's paved by the builder or whoever originally developed these properties around the canal. So it's not serviced by the village, like it would not be maintained by the village or anything like that.
Now, the properties to the north, I notice you don't have the lot lines on here. The properties to the north need to access this to build later on. I'm just asking, I mean, I know it's going to go before the village, but,
The properties to the north are in Orion Township.
oh, that's actually in Orion Township.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And
That's
actually,
the line right there, okay.
there's not any adjoining lots technically to that, because there's a 10-foot strip of land that was dedicated in the supervisor plat 5 that's between the right-of-way and the lots to the north. So it's like there's nothing adjoining the right-of-way. And ultimately, again, that right-of-way, you know, it was designed to get over to that lot 19 from the original 1925 plat. Mm-hmm. So really, what I'm asking here is that it just ends at, you know, the combined lot. And ultimately, it's only, you know, a recommendation from this BZA for the council to consider, and then the council would, you know, take it from there.
Well, I'm going to make one other statement, and I could be incorrect, but I think that would actually have to go to the planning commission and not the BZA board, and then to the council, because that would be more of a planning commission. I sit on both boards. I sit on this board because they need representation from the planning commission, and that's what I would understand it. Maybe the planner can tell us something different.
Yeah, that's usually the way the formal process works, if you've got an application process for vacation of the street, but as you say, usually it goes that route. I haven't seen your particular ordinance, but that's typically the way it's done. I don't think there's anything wrong with expressing an opinion on it, but you also maybe don't have all the facts, as you say. You don't know what the property, before you tonight is not information to tell you who else might be able to use this right away. You know along here, because he owns all these parcels, but you don't know what's happening to the north, other than it's in Orion Township and not in the village itself.
So I guess all I can say is, you know, with my correspondence with Joe, you know, he was discussing it with the village village attorney and things like that, trying to understand what the village charter and things like that would allow. And at some point, you know, Joe was saying, hey, this would be something that would need to be considered by the council. And then he said, okay, you know, the direction is you should go before the BZA. And he, you know, addressed an email to actually, I think Jennifer Neal and myself, and said, you know, Mike's going to be contacting you about a variance request, and also it is recommended, I'm trying to find the email, it's recommended that the BZA consider recommending to the council to consider the sale or vacation. So, you know, again, I'm not certainly privy to all the discussions that Joe has had internally. I know he had mentioned that there were some other similar cases in the village that have happened in the past.
There certainly wouldn't be anything wrong with you, you know, suggesting that the council investigate whether or not it would be appropriate to vacate that right of way, you know, from what you've seen.
Any other questions for the petitioner? No? Okay. Kind of surprised you're putting it back there too, because there's a lot of business around you.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece of property. It's kind of tucked back there.
You also own the island as well?
Pardon?
You also own the island as well?
Yeah, the island was, when these lots were created, when these lots were joined, the island was at some point by the village deemed it can't be sold separate from the rest of the land, and it also can't be developed.
Okay.
Like, I think it, you know, you could maybe set up a lawn chair and have a picnic there.
Okay. No other questions for the petitioner then? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to close this portion. I'd like to open to the receipt of public comments. Any public comments?
No letters?
No letters? Okay. I mean, he really doesn't have any neighbors here. So, just the businesses. Okay? Close the public comments. Let's open the recommendation of the planner.
In this case, our recommendation is to approve the variance request based on the following findings of fact. One, that compliance with ordinance standards for the front yard setback would severely limit what could be constructed on the parcel, given the location of wetlands and other constraints on the buildable area of the site. Two, the variances will provide substantial justice to the applicant and is not contrary to the interests of any adjoining property owners. Three, that the variance is the minimum necessary to allow for the use of the site, reasonable use of the site. Four, that the need for the variance results from the unusual location of the parcel on a dead-end street and the location of wetlands on most of it.
Okay,
And
sorry.
no going back once you go there. And five, that the need for the variance, and I think there's a typo in there, it says from height, but it's the need for the variance from the front yard setback is not self-created.
Thank you. Can you repeat all that? I'm just kidding.
I could.
I was trying to get a bulb.
No, I think we're all set. Okay. Let's close the recommendation by the planner, and let's open up the board deliberation and actions. see what I'm gonna do. Okay. Which board does it need to go directly to the council, or does it need to go to the other board? Oh, we'll push it over there. You're right. That's it. Just make sure when you guys put your motion together, you recommend it. Okay.
First, I'll make it. In case number A-19-06, parcel ID number 09-02-328-018, as described, T4N R10E, lot 42, and lots 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, except the easterly 5 feet thereof of Grandview Gardens, more commonly known as 445 North Channel Street, located in the RL Lake Single Family Residence Zoning District, that the following variances be approved or denied, developed to redevelop the site with new single-family residential structure with attached garage. Item 1, Article 12, Schedule Regulations, Section 12.02, Table, RL zoning, front street yard setback, 25 feet minimum required. 3 foot proposed to edge of covered porch, 22 foot variance requested be approved. That said variances are approved based upon the following findings of fact as noted in the April 9th, 2019 letter from McKenna, the copy of which is attached. The incorporated as part of these minutes. We're all 5 findings of fact support that, and let's see. Bear with me a second.
No problem.
Subject to the following conditions. 1, that the applicant shall remit the necessary funds to cover costs of the planning consultant, review fees above and beyond the amount placed in escrow at the time of application, administrative fees as necessary to cover the actual costs expended by the village in processing the subject request. The village council can investigate the vacation of a portion of North Channel Street along the subject properties frontage for the reasons set forth in the applicant's letter dated March 10th, 2019. This approval of the variances does not set a precedent of approval or denial of similar requests from other property owners or applicants in the future. This action is pursuant to the following items as listed below, with the attachments as listed below.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Passed. Okay, next regular scheduled BZA meeting will be May 2nd, 2019. Do we have any agenda items?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Okay. Good. Okay, the adjournment. I would, who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.